a signature. That's all it took to shatter a perfect life. For 9 months, she lovingly called him Arlo. She felt his every kick, his every hiccup under her heart. Her husband James held her hand, whispering promises of their future with their son Arlo. But in the cold, sterile light of the hospital room, as she held the official birth certificate for the first time, another name stared back at her. A name she didn't choose. A name she didn't know. It was in that silent, soul-crushing moment she realized the man she loved had made the most important decision of their lives without her. This isn't just a story about a name. It's about a lie so profound it could only be answered by the deadbolt click of a changed lock. The late afternoon sun of a crisp Boston autumn spilled across the Persian rug in the nursery, illuminating dust motes, dancing in the air like tiny golden fairies. Olivia traced the hand-painted giraffes on the mural, their long necks stretching towards a soft, cloud-like ceiling. Everything was perfect. Almost. For the past 6 months, this room in their sprawling Chestnut Hill home had been her sanctuary, a place of quiet anticipation, insulated from the subtle but immense pressures that came with marrying into the Sterling family. Her James, was different. He was her anchor in the often choppy waters of his family's old money society. He was the one who saw her Olivia Chen, the art gallery curator with a sharp eye and a sharper wit, not just a suitable match for the Sterling heir. Their love story felt like a modern fairy tale. He'd walked into her gallery to appraise a piece for his mother, and had been captivated not by the art, but by the passionate way she spoke about it. He was handsome, kind, and to his family's quiet chagrin, utterly besotted with her. Now at 38 weeks pregnant, Olivia felt a nesting instinct so powerful it was a physical force. Every tiny detail of this room was a testament to her love for their unborn son. The crib, a sleek modern design she'd picked out, stood in stark contrast to the heavy ornate furniture that filled the rest of the 6-bedroom mansion. "It has no character," her mother-in-law Eleanor Sterling had commented during her last visit, running a dismissive manicured finger over the crib's smooth oak finish. "A baby needs heritage." "Wait." Olivia had just smiled, patting her enormous belly. "He'll have plenty of that, Eleanor. We want him to have a little bit of lightness, too." The name was part of that lightness. Arlo Cole Sterling. Arlo for her late grandfather, a kind, gentle man who taught her how to paint. Cole because she simply loved the sound of it, strong and clear. James had agreed instantly. Arlo Cole Sterling, he'd whispered into her hair just last night. His hands splayed protectively over her stomach, feeling the baby's rhythmic movements. "I can't wait to meet him, Liv. Our son." The memory was so sweet, so vivid, it made her ache. She lowered herself carefully onto the plush rocking chair, the one James had spent an entire Saturday assembling, and let out a contented sigh. Their life was a dream. The brownstone on Beacon Street had been traded for this palatial house when they found out she was pregnant. James's software company was thriving, and her gallery was gaining prestige. They had everything. But sometimes, in the quiet moments, a sliver of unease would prick at her. It was in the way James's tone would shift when his mother called a subtle deference creeping in. It was in the casual mentions of the family trust and the board meetings he now had to attend. He'd always shielded her from the most suffocating aspects of his lineage. But since the pregnancy, the Sterling name seemed to be closing in a gilded cage, masquerading as a life of privilege. The firstborn son carries the legacy Olivia Eleanor had told her over a tense lunch at the Harvard Club. It is a responsibility James is finally beginning to understand. Olivia had brushed it off. James loved her. James loved their plans for their son. The name was settled. The future was theirs to write. A sharp, low cramp seized her, stealing her breath. She gripped the arms of the rocking chair, her knuckles turning white. Another one followed, stronger this time. Her heart began to pound, a frantic drum, against her ribs. She looked at the hospital bag, packed and waiting by the door. It was time. She called James, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. "It's happening," she breathed. "I'm on my way, Liv. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I love you." As she waited, she walked one last time around the nursery, her hand trailing over the crib, the changing table, the bookshelf filled with stories she couldn't wait to read. "We're going to meet you soon, Arlo," she whispered to her belly. "We're so ready for you." The contraction that hit her as she heard James's car screech into the driveway was so intense it brought her to her knees. This was it. The end of the waiting. The beginning of everything. She had no idea how right she was. The first 24 hours were a blur of primal effort and transcendent joy. The labor was long and arduous, but James was by her side, a steady presence, his hand in hers, his voice a constant stream of encouragement. And then at 4:17 a.m., their son arrived with a lusty cry and a full head of dark hair, just like his father's. When the nurse laid him on her chest, warm and squirming, the world dissolved. Nothing else existed. Not the sterile smell of the hospital room. Not the exhaustion clawing at her bones. Not the subtle tension that had been humming beneath the surface of their lives. There was only the weight of her son, the soft press of his cheek against her skin. "He's perfect, Liv," James whispered, his voice thick with emotion as he kissed her forehead, then the baby's head. "Just perfect, Arlo." She sighed, tears of happiness streaming down her face. "Hi, Arlo." They spent the next day in a blissful bubble. Visitors were kept to a minimum at Olivia's request. Even Eleanor was held at bay, a fact for which Olivia was profoundly grateful. It was just the three of them, a new family learning the rhythms of each other. James was a natural changing diapers, with a surprising lack of squeamishness, and rocking the baby to sleep with a low, rumbling hum. Olivia watched him, her heart so full she thought it might burst. The doubts, the whispers of unease, all felt like a distant dream. This was real. This was their life. On the second day, a perky administrative nurse bustled in, clipboard in hand. "Good morning. I just have the official paperwork for you to review and sign off on. The birth certificate information and social security application." "Of course," Olivia said, carefully, shifting the sleeping baby in her arms. James, who had been dozing in the uncomfortable armchair, stood up. "I can take care of that, honey. You just rest with him." He took the clipboard and leaned against the window, his back to her as he scribbled his signature. It seemed like a small, helpful gesture. A husband taking on the bureaucratic chores while his wife recovered. Olivia smiled, pulling the baby's blanket up to his chin. "All set," James said, handing the clipboard back to the nurse with a charming giggle. "Thank you so much." The nurse beamed at him before turning to Olivia. "And here is your souvenir copy of the birth certificate application. The official one will be mailed in a few weeks. Congratulations again, you two. He's a beautiful baby." She placed a crisp, heavy piece of paper on the bedside table and left. Olivia, feeling a flutter of sentimentality, reached for it. She wanted to see his name in print. Arlo Cole Sterling, the official declaration of his existence. Her fingers brushed the paper, and she lifted it. Her eyes scanned past the hospital name, the date, the weight and length, down to the box labeled Name. And there it was, printed in stark black official letters. Arthur James Sterling IV. The name didn't register at first. It was a jumble of letters that made no sense, like a foreign language. She blinked, her sleep-addled brain trying to process the information. Arthur. Where did that come from? Arthur was James's late grandfather, a famously ruthless patriarch who had built the Sterling Empire through hostile takeovers and an iron will. He was a man Eleanor lionized, and James had always spoken of with a complicated mixture of fear and resentment. Her eyes darted back to the paper, willing the letters to rearrange themselves into the name she knew, the name she'd whispered into her belly for months. Arlo Cole Sterling. But they remained stubbornly, cruelly the same. Arthur James Sterling IV. A cold dread, sharp and swift, pierced through her postpartum euphoria. It started in her stomach and spread through her veins, turning her blood to ice. The baby in her arms suddenly felt impossibly heavy. James. Her voice was a small, tight thing, unrecognizable. He was looking at his phone, a faint smile on his face as he typed. He didn't look up. "Yeah, babe, James, what is this?" she asked, her voice gaining a dangerous edge. She held the paper out, her hand trembling so violently the words blurred. He finally looked up, and for a fleeting second, she saw a flash of pure panic in his eyes. It was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a practiced, placating calm that she suddenly terrifyingly recognized as the Sterling face. "Oh, that," he said, walking over. He wouldn't meet her eyes, focusing instead on a spot on the wall behind her. "Liv, we need to talk about that. Talk about it." She repeated the words, feeling like shards of glass in her mouth. The baby stirred, sensing her distress, and let out a soft whimper. "What is there to talk about? This is a mistake. A typo. His name is Arlo." "It's not a mistake," James said quietly, finally forcing himself to look at her. His expression was a carefully constructed mask of gentle reason, but his eyes were pleading. "I named him Arthur." The world tilted. The sterile white walls of the hospital room seemed to be closing in on her. The rhythmic beep of the monitor beside her bed was a countdown to a detonation she hadn't seen coming. "You named him Arthur," she whispered, the betrayal so immense, so absolute, it was a physical blow. "You did this. Without me, while I was in labor, you went behind my back and changed our son's name. It was for the best. Olivia. For the family. For his future. His future. What about our future? The one we planned together. The one that included our son Arlo." His phone buzzed on the nightstand. The screen lit up. A text from Mother. "Is it done? I'm transferring the funds to the new trust now. You've made your grandfather proud." Olivia saw it. Her vision narrowed on the glowing screen. The text message was a confession, a motive, a co-conspirator. This wasn't just James. This was Eleanor. This was a transaction. Her baby, her son, had been a commodity in a deal she knew nothing about. It was my mother, James, started seeing where she was looking. There's a trust, a significant one. It was contingent on the firstborn son being named Arthur. It secures his entire future, Liv. College, a house, anything he ever wants. He had a secure future, she hissed, her voice low and venomous. She was shaking with a rage so profound it scared her. He had us. That was supposed to be enough. You sold his name. You sold our son's name without telling me. Olivia, please be reasonable. Reasonable. The word was a laugh, sharp and broken. You lie to me for months. You let me paint Arlo's room. You let me call him by that name. You hold my hand while I'm screaming in pain, all the while knowing you're going to erase a part of me, a part of us on a legal document the second you get the chance. And you want me to be reasonable? She looked down at the baby in her arms. This beautiful, perfect stranger, now saddled with the legacy of a man, he'd never know a name that felt like a brand seared onto his skin. And in that moment, the love for her husband curdled into something cold and hard and unrecognizable. She looked at James, at his handsome, pleading face, and saw not the man she loved, but a stranger wearing his skin, a pawn in his mother's dynastic games. "Get out," she whispered. "Liv, please. Get out." Her voice cracked, but it held a core of steel he had never heard before. "Get out of this room. Now." He hesitated, then saw the look on her face and knew there was no arguing. He backed away slowly, his hands held up in a gesture of surrender, and slipped out the door, closing it softly behind him. Olivia was left alone in the silent room, with the beep of the monitor, the weight of her son, and the crushing weight of the lie. She looked from the baby's innocent face to the birth certificate. Arthur James Sterling IV. It was a declaration of war, and she had no intention of losing. The ride home from the hospital was a study in suffocating silence. The brand-new top-of-the-line car seat sat in the back of their Range Rover, a throne for a tiny prince whose very identity was a battleground. Olivia sat in the back with the baby, her body angled away from James, creating a physical barrier that mirrored the chasm that had opened between them. James tried sporadically to breach the silence. "The house is all ready for him," he said, his eyes finding hers in the rearview mirror. Mrs. Gable stocked the fridge. Olivia stared out the window, watching the familiar scenery of Chestnut Hill slide by. The stately brick homes, the manicured lawns, the ancient, sprawling oaks. It all looked different now, alien. The beautiful facade of their life had been ripped away, and all she could see was the ugly, rotting framework beneath. "Liv, I know you're angry." He tried again, his voice strained. "But when you think about what this means for him, for his future—" "Stop talking about his future," she said, her voice flat and devoid of emotion. "You forfeited the right to do that when you made a unilateral decision about his present." He flinched, as if struck. The rest of the drive passed in silence. When they pulled into the long, sweeping driveway of their home, Olivia's heart, which she thought couldn't sink any lower, dropped. There, parked near the grand entrance, was Eleanor's black Mercedes, her driver standing stoically by the door. "What is she doing here?" Olivia demanded, her exhaustion warring with a fresh surge of adrenaline. She wanted to be here to welcome her grandson home. "James," said his voice, taking on that familiar, deferential tone. "The first Arthur in 2 generations. It's a big day for her." Her grandson, Olivia, repeated the words, tasting like poison. She looked down at the sleeping baby. She bought and paid for this moment, didn't she? Well, I hope she enjoys it. Without waiting for James to open her door, she got out, unbuckled to the car seat with practiced numb efficiency, and carried her son towards the house, her sanctuary, that now felt like enemy territory. Eleanor was waiting just inside the marble foyer, dressed in a Chanel tweed suit, her face a perfect mask of benevolent matriarchy. "Olivia, darling," she cooed, gliding forward, her arms outstretched. "Let me see him. Let me see my little Arthur." Olivia instinctively tightened her grip on the car seat, taking a step back. "He's sleeping. Eleanor." "Oh, a little peek won't hurt," she insisted, her smile not quite reaching her cold, assessing eyes. She peered into the carrier. "Oh, James, he has the sterling chin. Arthur will be so proud." She spoke of her late husband as if he were in the next room. The sight of this woman, the architect of her betrayal, gloating in her foyer, was more than Olivia could bear. She felt a wave of dizziness, the postpartum hormones, sleep deprivation, and white-hot rage churning into a toxic cocktail. "I need to take him upstairs," Olivia said, pushing past her and James. "He needs to be fed." She fled up the grand curving staircase, her footsteps muffled by the thick runner. She could hear their voices below, James's low and placating, Eleanor's crisp and commanding. She didn't want to hear them. She locked the door to the master bedroom suite, a click that echoed the shutting down of her own heart, and finally allowed herself to break. She laid the baby in his bassinet beside the bed and sank to the floor, silent sobs racking her body. She cried for the loss of her son Arlo. She cried for the loss of her husband, the man she thought she knew, and she cried for her own naivety, for believing their love could conquer the gravitational pull of the sterling name and its fortune. Hours passed. She fed the baby, she changed him. She held him close, whispering the name she'd chosen for him, over and over again, a desperate incantation. "Arlo. Your name is Arlo." Late in the evening, a soft knock came at the door. "Liv." "It's me. My mother's gone." Olivia didn't move. "Liv, please open the door. We can't go on like this. Let me in. Let's talk." "There's nothing to talk about." "James," she called out, her voice raw. "Of course there is. This is our home. You can't just lock me out." "It stopped feeling like my home the moment I saw that birth certificate," she replied. She heard him sigh in frustration. "Fine. Be like this. I'm going out for a bit to let you cool down. I'll be back later. We will talk about this, Olivia." She listened to his footsteps retreating down the hall, the heavy front door opening and closing. "To let you cool down." The condescension in his tone was the final straw. He still didn't get it. He thought this was a tantrum, a hormonal fit. He didn't understand that he had fundamentally broken the trust that was the bedrock of their marriage. He thought he could wait her out. She stood up, her movements stiff but resolute. A cold, clear purpose settled over her. He wanted to wait for her to cool down. He was going to be waiting a very long time. She picked up her phone, the same phone that had received his loving texts just days ago. She opened a web browser and typed 24/7 Locksmith Chestnut Hill. The first result had a glowing green button, Emergency Service. She pressed it. A man with a kind, weary voice answered on the second ring. "Harrison, Lock and Key." "Bill speaking. Hello." Olivia said, her voice steady and clear. "I need someone to come and change the locks on my house. All of them, as soon as possible." "Is this an emergency, ma'am?" "A domestic situation." Olivia looked at the sleeping baby, at the opulent room that felt like a prison. She thought of James's casual betrayal and Eleanor's triumphant smile. Yes, she said, a strange sense of calm washing over her. Yes, it is. I can have a technician there in 45 minutes. Thank you, Olivia said. I'll be waiting. She hung up the phone. She went to the nursery, their nursery, and looked at the name Arlo, spelled out in soft blue wooden blocks on a shelf. With deliberate, precise movements, she took them down. She then walked through the house, a ghost in her own life, gathering every trace of the future that had been stolen. The little onesie that said, "Future Artist." A nod to her profession. The silver cup engraved with the letter D from her own parents. She packed it all into a box. When the locksmith arrived, a quiet professional man named Kevin, she let him in. He took in the scene, the new mother with haunted eyes, the palatial, silent house, the request to change every single lock, and simply nodded. He didn't ask questions. He just got to work. For the next 2 hours, the house was filled with the sounds of drilling and hammering, the sounds of fortifications being built. With each turn of the screwdriver, each click of a new tumbler falling into place, Olivia felt a layer of her grief and helplessness fall away, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. By 11 p.m., it was done. Kevin handed her a set of new, gleaming brass keys. That's the front backside door and the garage interior door, ma'am. You have the only copies. Thank you, Kevin, she said, transferring a significant sum to him via her phone. Thank you for your discretion. Of course. Good night, ma'am. She locked the door behind him, engaging the new, unfamiliar deadbolt. The sound was deep, final, and satisfying. She was alone with her son in a fortress of her own making. She was watching the baby monitor from her bed when she saw the headlights of James's Range Rover sweep across the driveway just after midnight. She watched him walk to the front door, a silhouette against the motion-activated floodlights. She saw him put his key in the lock and fail. He tried again, jiggled it. She could imagine the confused frustration on his face. He walked to the side door. The same result. His phone buzzed on the nightstand beside her bed. It was him. She ignored it. It buzzed again and again. Then a text message appeared on the screen. Liv. What the hell is going on? My key isn't working. Olivia picked up her phone. Her fingers were steady as she typed her reply. Your key doesn't work because it's not your house anymore, James. You made your choice. You chose your mother and a trust fund over your wife and son. You made a decision about our family without me. So now I'm making one without you. You are not welcome here. Find somewhere else to sleep. She sent the message. Then she turned her phone to silent, rolled over, and faced her son, sleeping peacefully in his bassinet. The war had just begun, but for the first time since seeing that name on the birth certificate, she felt like she had an army, and its first victory was the silence on the other side of the locked door. The silence lasted for precisely 7 minutes. Then the assault began. James's first tactic was pleading. A string of text messages flooded her phone, each more desperate than the last. Liv, this is insane. It's freezing out here. Let me in. We need to talk this out face to face. You, me. No one else. Please, Olivia, think about the baby. He needs his father. He needs his father. The hypocrisy of that statement was so staggering, it almost made her laugh. She pictured James, standing on their perfectly manicured lawn, lit by the tasteful landscape lighting he'd been so proud of, unable to enter his own $1 million home. The image gave her a grim satisfaction. When the texts went unanswered, the knocking started. not the polite rap of a visitor, but a hard, insistent pounding that vibrated through the solid oak door. Olivia. "Open this door now." The baby stirred in his bassinet, his little face scrunching up. Olivia's resolve hardened. She would not allow him to terrorize them. She picked up the baby, holding him close her body, a shield against the noise. The pounding stopped. A moment of quiet. Then the doorbell began to ring, a frantic, incessant chime. He was leaning on it. A petulant child denied his way. Olivia walked to the upstairs window that overlooked the front entrance, staying hidden behind the heavy damask curtain. She saw him there, his handsome face contorted with fury, his fist still raised from banging on the door. He looked utterly lost. Good. After 5 solid minutes, the chiming stopped. He was pacing now, a caged animal, his phone pressed to his ear. She knew with chilling certainty who he was calling. 20 minutes later, a second pair of headlights sliced through the darkness. The sleek black nose of Eleanor's Mercedes sedan purred to a stop behind James's Range Rover. Eleanor Sterling emerged from the passenger side, not in a tweed suit this time, but in a silk dressing gown and a cashmere wrap, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, even at 1 in the morning. She looked not like a concerned grandmother, but like a queen arriving to quell a peasant uprising. She marched up to her son, her movements sharp and angry. Olivia couldn't hear their words, but she could see the pantomime of the conversation. James gesticulating wildly at the house. Eleanor patting his arm, then turning a gaze of pure venom towards the master bedroom window, as if she could sense Olivia watching. Eleanor took out her own phone. A moment later, Olivia's phone lit up with a call from a number she knew by heart. She let it go to voicemail. A text immediately followed. "Eleanor, Olivia. This childish theatrical display is beneath you. It is certainly beneath a Sterling. You will open this door at once and stop this nonsense." Olivia felt a surge of defiance. She typed a reply not to Eleanor but to James. "Get your mother off my property. This is between you and me. Her presence here proves my point. You are not a husband or a father. You are a puppet. This conversation is over until she is gone." She watched from the window as James read the text. He showed it to his mother. Eleanor's mouth thinned into a hard white line. She gestured angrily, clearly refusing to leave. James looked from his mother's furious face to the dark, silent house. He looked trapped. He looked weak. Olivia had a sudden, brilliant idea. She went to the smart home control panel on the wall, the one James had installed, that controlled everything from the lights to the sound system to the sprinklers. Her heart pounded as she scrolled through the options. There it was. Irrigation System Zone 1, Front Lawn. She pressed the manual start button. On the lawn below, every single sprinkler head erupted with a vengeance, sending powerful jets of cold water arcing across the pristine grass. A direct hit soaked James and Eleanor, who let out an indignant shriek. "What is the meaning of this?" Eleanor screeched, shielding her silk robe as if it were under attack from acid rain. James scrambled away from the spray, looking up at the house in disbelief. Olivia allowed herself a small, bitter smile. If they wanted a theatrical display, she would give them one. The drenched and furious duo retreated to Eleanor's car. For a few minutes they just sat there, the car's interior light illuminating their heated discussion. Finally, the Mercedes backed slowly out of the driveway and disappeared down the street. James's Range Rover remained. He was staying, laying siege. He sent one final text. "Fine. You win for tonight. But this isn't over, Liv. Not by a long shot." Olivia watched him get back into his car, recline the driver's seat, and plunge the interior into darkness. She stood at the window for a long time, watching the car that held the man who was now a stranger to her. The siege of Stirling Manor had begun, but the woman inside was no damsel in distress. She was the commander of the fort, and she had just won the first battle. Sleep would not come easily, but as she lay down, the keys to her new kingdom safe on the nightstand, she knew she had done the right thing. The locks were not just on the doors, they were around her heart, and James no longer had the key. The next morning, the Range Rover was gone. A small part of Olivia felt a pang of something not regret, but a hollow echo of the life that had vanished overnight. She quickly quashed it. This was not a time for sentimentality. This was a time for strategy. After a mostly sleepless night, spent feeding the baby and watching the driveway, Olivia knew she couldn't do this alone. The Stirlings had wealth influence and a team of lawyers who could crush people for sport. She had her wits, a newborn son, and a righteous fury that was quickly solidifying into cold, hard resolve. She needed her own army. Her first call was to her parents in California. She told them everything, her voice cracking as she recounted the story of the birth certificate. Their reaction was immediate and unequivocal. "You're flying out here today, honey," her father, a retired architect, said, his voice tight with anger. "Both of you. We'll get you the best family lawyer in the state." "No, Dad," Olivia said, surprising herself with her own firmness. "I'm not running. This is my home. He abandoned this home, not me. I'm staying here. But I do need a lawyer. The best one in Boston." Her second call was to that lawyer, a woman named Kate Mercer, a notorious shark in the world of high-net-worth divorces, recommended by a friend from the art world who had gone through a similarly messy split. He did what Kate asked after Olivia explained the situation, a note of impressed disbelief in her voice. Changed the name on the birth certificate for a trust fund, Honey. In 20 years of doing this, that's a new one. It's a violation of trust so profound it's almost poetic. We can work with this. The validation in Kate's voice was like a balm. "What do I do?" Olivia asked. "You sit tight and you don't speak to him or his mother. You document everything. Every text, every call, every time he drives by the house. And you start looking. Men like James' families, like the Stirlings. The name on the birth certificate isn't the only secret they're keeping. Look for financial statements, trust documents, anything he might have left behind." Following Kate's advice, Olivia turned her home into an intelligence-gathering headquarters. During the baby's nap times, she began a methodical search of James's home office, a space she'd rarely entered. It was a masculine sanctuary of dark wood leather and the smell of expensive cologne. It was also a treasure trove. Tucked away in a locked drawer of his desk, a lock she pried open with a screwdriver, from the kitchen she found it. A folder labeled Stirling Family Trust, AJS 4. Her hands trembled as she opened it. It was all there in black and white. A subtrust of the main Stirling family fortune, established by Arthur Stirling Sr. decades ago. It stipulated that the firstborn male heir of his grandson James would inherit a staggering sum upwards of $20 million, provided the child was legally named Arthur James Stirling IV. The money would be managed by a trustee until the boy's 25th birthday. The trustee Olivia saw with a jolt of ice in her veins was Eleanor Stirling. The betrayal was deeper than she could have imagined. This wasn't just about securing their son's future. It was about control. Eleanor would hold the purse strings not just for her grandson, but indirectly for James and Olivia as well. They would be beholden to her for any major expense, any significant life choice. The name wasn't just a name, it was a leash. As she dug deeper, she found more. Statements for credit cards in James's name she'd never seen before, with charges for lavish dinners in the financial district, hotel suites, and what looked like rent payments on a luxury apartment in the Seaport district, an apartment she knew nothing about. Who was he meeting? What was he hiding? The perfect husband, the doting father-to-be, was a construct, a facade. And she had been living in the stage set he'd built. Just as she was reeling from these discoveries, her phone buzzed with a number she didn't recognize. She almost ignored it, but something told her to answer. "Is this Olivia?" a young woman's voice asked, hesitant and quiet. "Who is this?" It's Chloe, James's sister." Olivia's guard went up immediately. Chloe was the youngest Sterling, a free-spirited artist who had always been kind to her, but was still undeniably a Sterling. "What do you want, Chloe? I heard what happened." Chloe's voice was barely a whisper. "My mother she's on a rampage." "I'm so sorry, Olivia." What James did was unforgivable. Tears pricked Olivia's eyes. It was the first time someone from his side had acknowledged the depth of the betrayal. "He told me you locked him out," Chloe continued. "Good for you. Honestly, why are you calling me Chloe?" Olivia asked, still wary. "Because I hate what my family does to people, what my mother does. She did it to my father. She did it to James. And now she's trying to do it to you and your son. There's something you need to know. The Arthur Trust. It's not just about the money." Olivia sat down, clutching the phone. "What do you mean?" "My grandfather. Arthur was a monster," Chloe said, her voice shaking slightly. "A controlling, abusive man. The trust comes with conditions, bylaws. The trustee, my mother, has the power to make decisions about the beneficiary's education, upbringing, even their approved place of residence, if she deems the parents unfit or not acting in the best interests of the Sterling legacy." The room spun. Unfit. It was a weapon. Eleanor could use any misstep, any deviation from her plan, to declare Olivia unfit and gain legal influence over her son's life. Changing the locks, filing for divorce, it could all be twisted and used against her. "She's already talking to the family lawyers," Olivia Chloe warned. "She's trying to paint you as unstable, hysterical, a new mother suffering from postpartum psychosis. She's going to try and take your baby." The threat landed with the force of a physical blow. This was no longer just a marital dispute. It was a war for her child. "Why are you telling me this?" Olivia whispered. "Because James was too weak to stand up to her. But maybe you're not. And because that little boy deserves to be Arlo, not a pawn named Arthur." "Check the prenuptial agreement, Olivia. The one she had her lawyers draft. Check the fine print under the family legacy clause. James probably doesn't even know it's in there." The call ended. Olivia's mind raced. The prenup. She'd barely read it at the time, swept up in love and trusting James when he said it was just a formality to protect the family business. She found her copy in their safe. With trembling fingers, she flipped to the clause Chloe had mentioned, and there it was buried in dense legalese, a stipulation that in matters pertaining to the cultural and financial heritage of any children, the decisions of the Sterling Family Trust's appointed trustee would be given significant legal weight. She had signed it. Years ago, she had signed a document that handed Eleanor Sterling the keys to her future child's life. But Chloe's call had given her more than just a warning. It had given her an ally, an inside source, and it had revealed her enemy's playbook. Eleanor expected her to be hysterical, emotional, unstable. Fine. She would be the exact opposite. She would be cold, calculating, and armed with information. She photocopied every document, every statement. She took pictures. She uploaded everything to a secure cloud server and shared it with her lawyer, Kate. The siege might be happening at her front door, but the real war would be fought with paper and secrets. And she was finally ready to fight back. 3 days after changing the locks, Olivia made her move. The house had become her fortress and her war room. Chloe's intel combined with the documents she'd uncovered formed a powerful arsenal. She was no longer just a wounded wife. She was a woman with a strategy. Through her lawyer, Kate Mercer, she arranged a meeting. Not at the house and not at a Sterling-owned office building. She chose a neutral, sterile location, a conference room at a high-end mediation center in downtown Boston. It was a place devoid of history or power dynamics, a blank slate where the truth could be laid bare. She stipulated the terms of the meeting. James was to come alone. No lawyers present in the room, though Kate would be waiting in an adjacent office. No Eleanor. This was a conversation between a husband and a wife, or what was left of them. Olivia arrived first. She chose a seat at the long, polished table that did not face the door, forcing him to walk in and see her already in a position of power. She wore not a mourning wife's attire, but a sharp black pantsuit she'd favored for tough negotiations at the gallery. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, elegant bun. When James walked in, she wanted him to see not the new mother he'd betrayed, but the woman he had underestimated. He entered looking haggard. He hadn't been sleeping. His expensive suit was rumpled, and his eyes were red-rimmed. He looked at her, and his face was a mix of desperation and hope. "Liv," he breathed, starting towards her. "Thank you for doing this." She held up a hand, a gesture that stopped him cold. "Sit down, James." He flinched at her tone, the warmth completely gone, replaced by a chilling calm. He sat opposite her, the expanse of polished mahogany between them, feeling like a mile-wide canyon. "I didn't arrange this meeting to reconcile," she began, her voice steady and measured. "I didn't arrange it to hear more apologies or excuses. I arranged it to present you with your options." She slid a sleek, leather-bound folder across the table towards him. Option A. He opened it. Inside was a petition for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. Attached to it were copies of the credit card statements for his secret apartment printouts of the trust documents and a highlighted copy of the prenup's family legacy clause. "That is a divorce filing," she explained coolly. "In it, I will be petitioning for sole physical and legal custody of our son, citing emotional distress fraud and a conspiracy between you and your mother to coerce me into a binding legal arrangement concerning my child under false pretenses. I will be using the evidence in that folder, your secret apartment, the financial deceit, the predatory nature of the trust your mother controls, to paint a picture of a marital environment built on lies. I will argue that you and your family are not a fit environment for a child. And given your actions, James, I think I'll win." He stared at the papers, his face pale. He looked utterly broken. "Liv, no. Please. I never wanted any of this." "You're right," she agreed, her voice cutting through his plea. "You didn't want any of this. You wanted everything. You wanted the wife and the perfect family, and you wanted Mummy's trust fund. You wanted the applause for being a modern husband while still cashing the check for being a dynastic son. The problem is you can't have both. She let the silence hang in the air, heavy and suffocating. Then she slid a second identical folder across the table. Option B. He looked at her confused before opening the second folder. Inside was a different set of documents. The first was a legal petition to change their son's name from Arthur James Sterling IV to Arlo Cole Sterling. The second was a post-nuptial agreement drafted by Kate that explicitly nullified the family legacy clause of their original prenup. It stated in no uncertain terms that all decisions regarding their child's health education and upbringing would be made jointly by Olivia and James, and by them alone. It also included a financial transparency clause requiring quarterly reviews of all family assets and liabilities to be conducted by a neutral third-party accountant. The third document was a brochure for a renowned marriage and family therapist specializing in intrusive family dynamics. Option B is the only other path forward. Olivia stated, her eyes locking onto his. It is not a path back to where we were. That place doesn't exist anymore. This is a path to something new, and it begins with these non-negotiable terms. She laid them out one by one, like a general issuing commands. First, you will sign the petition to change his name today. We will file it before we leave this building. Our son will be Arlo. He will not be a financial instrument for your mother. Second, you will sign the post-nuptial agreement. You will sever the financial and legal umbilical cord to your mother. The Arthur Trust can rot for all I care. We will live on what we earn. Your company, my gallery. If it means selling the house in Chestnut Hill and moving into a smaller place, so be it. I would rather live in a studio apartment with a man I can trust than in a mansion with a puppet. Third, you will go to your mother. You will tell her that you are your own man, that your wife and son are your primary family now, and that she will have no say in how we raise him. Her access to her grandson will be contingent on her respect for me as his mother and as your wife. And finally, Olivia's voice softened almost imperceptibly. You and I will go to counseling. We will go for a year, and you will fight every single day to earn back a fraction of the trust you shattered. You will have to prove to me that you chose me, not that you were cornered into it. She leaned back in her chair, her part said. She had laid her cards on the table. One folder represented an ending, the other a brutal, difficult, uncertain beginning. The choice was his. James stared at the two folders, his head in his hands. He was silent for a long time. The only sound in the room, his own ragged breathing. He looked up, his eyes filled with tears. She'll disown me, he whispered. The trust, the board seat, everything. She'll cut me off completely. Olivia's face was unreadable. I know, she said. It wasn't a threat. It was a statement of fact. This was the price of his betrayal. The cost of redemption. He looked at the divorce papers, at the prospect of losing his son, of having his secrets aired in a bitter court battle. Then he looked at the second folder, at the path to a life that was smaller perhaps in a financial sense, but a life that was his own. A life with a chance, however slim, to rebuild what he had broken. He slowly, deliberately closed the folder containing the divorce papers. He pushed it back across the table to her. Then, with a trembling hand, he picked up a pen, opened the second folder, and signed his name on the line at the bottom of the petition to legally change his son's name to Arlo Cole Sterling. The signature was not a magic wand. It didn't erase the betrayal or instantly mend the chasm between them. It was simply a choice, a first trembling step onto a long and treacherous path. The confrontation with Eleanor was apocalyptic. James, armed with a newfound but fragile spine, met her that evening. Olivia was not there, but Chloe later recounted the story in a hushed phone call. It happened in the grand, suffocating library of the main Sterling estate. Eleanor, expecting a report of Olivia's capitulation, was met instead with her son's declaration of independence. He told her he was changing the baby's name to Arlo. He told her he had signed a post-enup that rendered her family legacy clause impotent. He told her that her control over his family was over. Eleanor, according to Chloe, did not scream. Her fury was a far more terrifying Arctic cold. She told him he was a fool, a disappointment, and that he was throwing away his son's birthright for a woman who was common and manipulative. She informed him he was immediately removed from the family trust's board. His access to the generational wealth was severed. She ended the conversation by telling him that he was no longer her son. James came back to the house that night. Olivia had given him one of the new keys after he signed the papers, a probationary key, and he looked like a man who had survived a plane crash. He was pale, shaken, but for the first time in a long time, he looked free. He didn't try to kiss her or hug her. He simply stood in the foyer of the house that now felt too big, too opulent for them, and said, "It's done." Olivia just nodded. Okay, the weeks that followed were excruciatingly awkward. They were two strangers cohabitating in the ruins of their old life. They spoke in polite, functional sentences. Did the baby sleep? I bought groceries. Our first therapy session is on Thursday. They moved around each other with a painful courtesy, the air thick with unspoken words. They put the Chestnut Hill mansion on the market. It sold quickly to a hedge fund manager who fell in love with its soulless grandeur. The sale felt like an exorcism. They used the proceeds, along with James's now finite personal capital, from his business to buy a modest but beautiful Victorian house in Cambridge, a neighborhood that felt more like Olivia's world than his. It had a small yard, a sun-drenched room that would be her art studio, and a nursery that was a blank canvas. Together, without speaking much, they painted the room a soft, warm grey. Olivia unpacked the box of items she had hidden away. The wooden blocks, spelling DANIEL. The onesie that said Future Artist. The silver cup with the D engraving. Seeing them in this new space, this new home, built on a foundation of brutal honesty, felt like a quiet triumph. Therapy was raw. It was ugly. Olivia laid her betrayal bare, the full scope of her pain and rage. James, stripped of his family's influence and forced to confront the weakness in his own character, had no choice but to listen. He spoke of the lifelong pressure, the crushing weight of his grandfather's name and his mother's expectations. It wasn't an excuse, the therapist was quick to point out, but it was a reason. Understanding it was the first step toward changing it. Slowly, glacially, things began to shift. The change wasn't in grand gestures, but in tiny, observable moments. It was James getting up for every single night, feeding, insisting Olivia rest, telling her, "I need to do this. I need to show up." It was him actively listening to her talk about her day at the gallery, asking questions, his phone nowhere in sight. It was him one afternoon, looking at their son, their beautiful legally named son Arlo, and saying, "He looks like you. He has your eyes. Thank God." The trust was not rebuilt in a day, a month, or even a year. It was painstakingly re-earned brick by brick. The new locks on their Cambridge home were symbolic. They were chosen together. The keys were shared not as a right, but as a privilege. Their life was no longer a millionaire's fairy tale. There were no more galas at the Harvard Club. No more fawning society pages. Eleanor Sterling never spoke to them again. But what they lost in gilded cages, they gained in something far more valuable: authenticity. They were building a smaller, quieter life. But it was a life that was real. It was theirs. One evening about a year later, Olivia was rocking Arlo to sleep in his room. James stood in the doorway watching them. The silence between them was no longer awkward, but comfortable. "I love you, Olivia," he said quietly. "I know I have a long way to go to deserve to say that. But I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be the man you thought I was." Olivia looked at him, at the husband she was getting to know for the second time. The love she felt was different now, less naive, more cautious, but deeper in a way. It was a love that had been tested by fire and had, against all odds, survived. "I know you will, James," she said. And for the first time, she truly believed it. What you've just heard is a story of ultimate betrayal, but also one of incredible strength. Olivia's world was shattered by a single signature, a secret deal made by the man she trusted most. But instead of breaking, she fought back. She turned her pain into power, her home into a fortress, and her heartbreak into a battle plan. This story reminds us that trust is the most valuable currency in any relationship, and once broken, it takes more than apologies to rebuild it. It takes action, sacrifice, and the courage to tear everything down to build something real and lasting. What would you have done in Olivia's position? Could you ever forgive a betrayal that deep? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. If this story moved you, please give this video a like, share it with someone who appreciates a story of strength and resilience, and be sure to subscribe to our channel for more real-life drama every week. Thank you for listening.